So my name is Reverend Lezli Goodwin, and I am part of the senior ministerial team here at New Vision Center. And I know you've been beautifully welcomed by our beloved Beverly, and I want to welcome you as well. Whether this is your very first time in this building, your first time back after a long, long time, or you're here every single Sunday with us, or whatever permutation in between, please know that we feel you, we love you, we're so excited to have you here. And that counts for y'all too, online. We're super excited that you join in with us. You're welcome every single week. Please check in, let us know where you're from. We want to know you. You're a part of our community. So today's talk, I just got back from Asilomar, which is an approximately 1 week long trip into Central California coast in Pacific Grove that is a traditional escape, if you will, for Science of Mind folks over the last 60 years or so. And before I left, Jeff Hargis, in all his infinite wisdom and chutzpah, asked me what the talk title was for this talk, like 4 weeks in advance so he could have it ready. And immediately it jumped to my mind, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Because we're reading this month When Things Fall Apart by the Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron. And this is the book that goes beyond law of attraction, goes beyond the basics of science of mind into the, but what about when it doesn't work? What about when my kid gets a terminal illness? What about when my friend dies or my husband? What about when I lose the job I worked so hard for and loved so much? Then what? We all fall down. So I thought, just coming back from Asilomar, you guys could really handle a nice light talk like that. Something nice and easy. Asilomar is a really interesting place. It was Ernest Holmes' favorite place in the whole world. He went there for several weeks every summer from the summer of 1945 until the summer before his death, which was 1959, at which point he gave a talk, his very last talk, to the Congregation of Religious Science, and it's called Sermon by the Sea. And we will have a link to it in the newsletter this week. I really, really encourage everybody to read it. But one of the things he says in that talk is, show me someone who is for something and against nothing, and I will show you an exalted soul. I will show you the next Jesus Christ. And we use that phrase a lot when we're talking about politics, family relations. It's just me. I'm the only one that ever needs to, I understand. I'm definitely the only one. But when I lean into that, someone who's for something and against nothing, when I lean into that, the thing that I most want to be against is the safety and mortality of the people that I love and of my own self. I mean, we're programmed as human beings to be for the health and safety and prosperity of our own lives and of the lives of people we love, and we all fall down. So is there a way to not be against what is, and instead just be for some permutation of what we prefer? This is what we explored all week long at Asilomar, and talk after talk after talk after talk of these amazing 30, 40, 50-year-long ministers who've dedicated their lives to this teaching and of the sharing of this teaching. And we kept coming back to the same basic topics. How do we use the tools of this teaching to handle life when it gets real messy? Real messy. Gender alignment, family disillusion, illness and death, bankruptcy. When we feel like the legs have been cut out from under everything that we think we should want to have had, what do we do when it all falls down? I feel really lucky because I feel like I'm being midwifed in this process by someone who was truly an expert in owning what is and being present with exactly what is in front of her every single moment. And that is my friend, our friend, Diane Denis, who is a practitioner in this congregation for 14 years and dedicated every ounce of her being to being in prayer for y'all. Diane was one who was very clear about what she wanted. She loved her kitties, her lots and lots and lots of kitties at times. She's a kitty rescuer. She loved her daughter and her grandson, and she loved New Vision Center. And what she wanted more than anything, and she said it over and over and over again, is she wanted to be seen in the light of her wholeness to the very end of her expression in this form, which is why some of you are just finding out right now that she was even ill. She transitioned this past week in exactly her own terms, at home, loved up by those who loved her, receiving constant tweets and emails and phone calls and letters. Reverend Karen sat by her bedside a couple days before she passed and read her love notes from all the practitioners. She is no longer in physical form with us, but I am here to tell you right now, she is not against it. Her mystic soul, truly a mystic soul, has been called into that cosmic oneness, and there's nothing holding her back now. And when I know the joy and the ease with which she transitioned into this new life, it calls me to a higher level of consciousness about what's happening in my own. If someone can joyfully and gloriously trust God to the point that she just lets it be, how can I learn to do that? How can this teaching help me learn to do that? And over again, that's what we talked about in these talks at Asilomar. How do we allow ourselves to heal and change and become who we really are? Sometimes the universe has to shake us out of what we think is to allow what is truly true to make itself known. We make it wrong when we fall down, don't we? We make it not okay. We judge ourselves. Sometimes we judge each other. But we all fall down. How boring would a life be where everything just went along at an 8 out of 10 all the time forever? 8 would start to feel like 4. It would. We need the highs and lows to put things in some context. What we must do as a movement is start encouraging one another to not ask, how did I fail when something goes wrong? What am I not doing properly? How did I say the prayer wrong? Am I not meditating long enough? I assure you, however long you meditated has nothing to do with your mother's cancer. But sometimes we think it does. We think that we should be able to poof everything into not the right place, but the place I think it should be. What if everything is already in the right place? A friend of mine, a colleague, said that he recognized that I had developed a ministerial consciousness when he heard me say that my job at the time as a practitioner was to trust the universe, the divine, God, Spirit, whatever your word for it is, to trust Spirit so completely that I know that everything is perfect, even if it means my stepdaughter dies. It is not a small call we have here. to trust God so completely that I know that everything is perfect, even if I die. And I don't mean in like 60 years. I mean like next year. This is not a part of the plan. This is not the expectation, but it happens. Can I trust that my friend Diane is 100% fabulous right now and probably sitting right over there in the spot that she likes to hang out so that she could love all on you again? Can I do that? Can we do that? There sometimes is a little bit of leftover residue in our teaching from the old days of, oh, you got sick. Where was your consciousness? Remember those days? If you're new, ignore me completely. Those days never happened. Shh. What thought did you think that brought that forward? The wonderful minister Patrick Harbula, in his talk at Asilomar, said, we no longer teach when things go wrong. What consciousness created that? The better question is, what freedom, what love, what joy is wanting to be expressed here? Doesn't that feel better? It takes us to the same place because it invites us into the higher consciousness. What consciousness created that was really trying to ask us, do you want to keep thinking that way? Do you want to keep getting that result? Or shall we try something new? But it sort of came across like, pew, when you were asked it. Whereas, so what wants to come forward now? What beautiful thing is being birthed in this experience? I can tell you for me, having the illness that I've had, I move kind of fast. I talk kind of fast. This might not be news to some of you. Don't take a lot of breaks by nature. And I wonder sometimes if I would have been able to slow myself down enough to develop this kind of consciousness that I'm growing at this point in my life, if I hadn't had the universe go, stop, just sit down, baby, just chill out. You got some thinking to do. You got some praying to do. Would I be here now? Would I be who I am? What if this illness is exactly the thing that was required for me to say whatever it is for one of you, because every talk it's one of you to hear the one thing it takes to change everything? Is it worth it? I think it is. We've all been in the room where we heard the one thing that changed everything, right? We probably wouldn't be in this room if we hadn't. And one of you will have that experience today, maybe more than one of you. And if I weren't here, a different minister would be here giving a different talk, and I'm sure that talk would be great too, but it wouldn't be that one thing that one person needs to hear. It would be something different. The universe is conspiring for our good to bring us all into exactly where we're supposed to be. And that is what religious science tells us. Oh, but it's hard. It's hard. We like to think that being the perfect spiritual being, is going to somehow protect us from anything not meeting our immediate expectations. If we pray aright and we think aright and we walk aright and we dress aright and we go to the right services at the right time at the right church, which is my church. I mean, the other ones are great too. And that somehow nobody's going to get sick, nobody's ever going to die, nobody's ever going to lose their job, none of this is ever going to happen. We're never going to need surgery. Religious science does not promise us that life will not keep unfolding. What it does is gives us the tools to contextualize it and move forward and thrive through it, no matter what is happening. That's what Diane demonstrated so beautifully to us over the last couple of months. She was in her perfect space, whatever moment was happening. If it was the lay quietly and talk to no one moment, it was the lay quietly and talk to no one moment. If it was the return texts moment, it was that moment. If her daughter was there, it was her time to be with her. If Reverend Karen was at her house, it was her time to be with her. And she didn't push back at it. She didn't resist it. Because what does religious science tells us? What we resist persists. What we put energy into, we get more of. And there's a lot of energy in pushing away. There's a lot of energy in not in my backyard, and I don't trust that, and that's not for me. There's a lot of energy. And so what are we doing? We're inviting more of that. She was into inviting more love, more joy, more connection, and that's it. The Buddhists do this really well. My husband is a Buddhist, so I got the inside track. And Pema Chodron is a Buddhist teacher. And there's this wonderful story about, you've probably heard it, so just go along with the ride if you have, about a family, middle-class family, and they had one strapping, handsome, agile, strong son. And all the family's hopes were pinned on this one kid, bringing them a lot of notoriety and financial support to underpin the family. And then he was in a terrible riding accident, and he broke both of his legs. And all the villagers came, and they said, "Oh, that's such a tragedy. That's so unfortunate. What a disaster. Everything is terrible." And the dad said, "Maybe, maybe not. We don't know." And a couple weeks later, the general came, and he took all the able-bodied men to war. And all the villagers came, and they said, "Oh, how fortunate, how lucky you are. Your son was too injured to go off to war. How fortunate you are. You're the luckiest family in the whole village." And the dad said, "Maybe, maybe not. We don't know." We think we know what's important, what we want. We probably would have been the villagers saying, "Oh no, your son broke his legs. This is a tragedy." Turned out to be the luckiest thing that ever happened. Unless the story goes on with something that made it an unlucky thing again. We make it lucky. We make it not lucky by what we decide we believe about it. The Buddhists tell us in the first of the Four Noble Truths that the difference between what is true and what we think should be true is the source of all suffering. If we can look right at what's happening and say, that's what's happening. Okay, so what love, what joy, what beauty wants to be born from this? Then it's good no matter what. Because if love and beauty and joy and kindness and connection and peace, if pure love comes from every situation, because that's the question we ask, can anything ever be bad? Is there anything to be against? The answer is no, in case you didn't know. The entire universe is conspiring for our good. They couldn't have known that breaking that boy's legs was the best luck they could have. But he was wise enough to trust not to judge it. We don't know. We think we know, but we don't know. So how do we do this? How do we do it all? It's about surrender. And I know, I can hear the thought waves, people coming at me. Surrender gets a bad rap. We think it's this, right? Oh, he's so sad. We think it's this. We think it's, I quit, I am defeated, I am crushed, I give up. And it's hard. It's hard because we work so long to gain personal responsibility and to understand how to create the things we want to create, that when somebody like me stands in front of you and says, "Okay, now that you figured all that out, surrender," it feels like going backwards, right? I don't want to surrender. I just figured out taking responsibility and having ownership. But I'm not talking about this kind of surrender. I'm talking about this kind of surrender. The surrender that is the trust so deep in the infinite spirit that I can just give it over, that I don't have to analyze every micro point, that I don't have to be told how, when, why, now. I have a timeline, I have a chart. I'm supposed to be married with 2.3 kids, and I am late on the chart. That was just me too? Man, you guys are good. Surrender feels like giving up until we realize it's actually giving it over. It's like literally taking the feelings of pain and worry and distress physically out of your body and going, not mine. God's bigger than me. God can have it. Don't want that one either. Our physical body's shell is pretty finite. We are not big enough to hold the energy that's meant for the divine. We're meant to give it over. We're meant to let it go. Doesn't that make more sense than trying to run the universe our own selves? There's an infinite I feel like I say this a lot. There's an infinite intelligence that runs the entire universe, and then there's my little human brain. Who should be in charge? When I hear the phrase, and they piped this in Ernest Holmes' own voice over Merrill Hall at the end of this beautiful Taizé service, they piped in his voice saying, there is a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it. And I cried. And Karen cried. Probably everybody cried. There's a power in the universe greater than you are. That's the key phrase, greater than you are. It is so comforting to me to think that the allness of the divine is available in me, but that all that God is not just me. That the God that is Karen is not me, and the God that is Ron is not me, and the God that is Jolene is not me. So that even that the allness of the divine can show up in me and for me, it's infinite. It's more than I could ever conceive of. And that is what I surrender into. That energy that knows the end of the story when I cannot. I can trust. I can try to trust. I can work on trusting that there's a happy ending to my story, even when I'm in the rough part. Even when I'm in the battle where Harry and Voldemort are still fighting in the woods and we don't know who's going to win. Come on. You watch the movie. We run into those spots in our life all the time, and we think that the brokenness, we think that the downness, we think that the having fallen is what is important in our story, or having climbed, having risen, having flown. We think that that is the important part of our story. What I have learned in the last few years, I said this and someone wrote it down and handed it to me on a sticky note at Asilomar. What I have learned is that when everything is stripped away, the health, the money, the certainty, when all you have left is your soul, it is enough. It is enough. So I want to close with a reading that I heard in that beautiful Taizé service at Asilomar. I felt like we carried all of you into Merrill Hall with us. And so here's me bringing a little bit of Merrill Hall home to you. It's by Araya Mountain Dreamer, and it's called The Invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dreams, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with the pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, or remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. I want to know if you can be thankful and therefore be trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your life from God's presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of a lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done for the children. It doesn't interest me who you are, how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. I want to know if you can be for something and against nothing in the face of whatever feels like falling down to you. I have faith in you. I know that you can. And so it is. Oh, let's anchor that in prayer. What I know is that there is only one, that even as we experience life as individuals, there is a thread of connection that links every heart to every other heart, and it is this that we call God, sweet spirit, infinite mind, that place where every being is a part of every other being, so that truly there is only one life, one love, one heart, one mind. And what I know is that everything in that oneness is conspiring for the highest and best of life itself. And as we are each a part of life, it is conspiring for our good, for our wholeness, for our strength, for the love and the freedom and the beauty and the joy that rises out of every circumstance to be so big, so bright, so full, that the falling falls away. I know for each one of us that the grace of God, the grace of Spirit, allows us to surrender into it so that we don't need to know. So that we can hold out for the clarity that comes from our prayer chair, the clarity of the one mind speaking to us, and don't have to try to figure it out or chart it out or plot it out with our human minds and our human calendars. I know that the allness of the beauty of the entire universe is seeded into every heart in this room, every heart within the sound of my voice, in its wholeness, in its power, in its magnificence, and that is the truth of who we are. I know that love never falls down, that even if our human lives are on the ground, that God is such a rising force within us that there is nothing that can crush our spirit. I know that we hold one another up as a microcosm of the macrocosm of the one, that this community supports and believes in and belongs to one another. Right where we are, right as we are perfect, and it is good, and so it is.